I'm Norris and welcome back to another sew along. Today we'll be working on my latest Nomi pattern design, which is ME2118, which is a double-breasted jacket. Now the details that stand out in this pattern are the peak lapels, the double vent in the back, and the half lining. Now if you're new to sewing or just want to brush up on your skills a bit, you can go to sewedacademy.com where you can learn all the basics. And if you go now, you can sign up for a free trial just to see if you like it. Now let's get started. Okay, so once again, like I said, we're working on my latest Nomi pattern, which is ME2118. And it's a double-breasted jacket, double welt pockets with flaps at the bottom, and then also a breast pocket only on the left side, a nice wide peak lapel, and a double back vent. Now, I haven't seen too many patterns with a double back vent, but the one that I have seen, I love it, so that's why I integrated that into this particular pattern. And this is a half lining. You only have a back lining and then also the sleeve lining. Another detail about this pattern that I love is that I did bias tape around the seams that make it nice and clean on the inside because it do not have a full lining. So if you look at the back, you'll see some of those details with the line art like I was just mentioning, especially with those back vents. Look for your sizes with the measurements here, but then also go down to the finished garment measurements, and then you'll know, say more or less how you want this to fit. Now, this is not to be suited and booted, tapered up, although you can wear it as a suit. It's meant to be a little bit oversized, baggy, a nice chic, streetwear kind of vibe look. So that's kind of what I was going for, if you can't tell by the actual styling that I did with the sweatpants and sneakers. But do as you want. This is a pattern that you will love. Also, I want to mention that the surgeon sleeves, the working buttons on the side that you normally see on a jacket like this, I did not put buttonholes, neither did I do the buttons. It's meant to just have the little pocket opening, the little slit, just for the relaxed, oversized fit that I mentioned. If you want to do buttonholes and add your buttons, you can do it. I just didn't add it on here because that's the look that I was going for with this design. All right, so now that we got all that out of the way, let's go through all the pattern pieces we're going to need for this pattern. Okay, so I'm gonna go ahead and start with pattern piece number 1. It's the front. You want to cut 2 of these out of your fabric, and then also there's a dot here in this corner, and you have 2 notches right here in the front, just in front of this buttonhole here, buttonhole placement. I went ahead and marked out the seam line, which is 5/8 of an inch, and I did a line from right where that top notch is to this dot and created a line with my ruler. Now this right here is going to be where I place some twill tape just to give it a little bit more construction, because it is a jacket. Now this is not going to be a traditional tailored jacket, but we will have tailored details here and there just to give it a little bit more construction. Okay. Pattern piece number 9, this is the back. You want to cut 2 of these out of your fabric. Pattern piece number 13, this is the front facing. You want to cut 2 out of fabric and 2 out of inner facing. Next we have pattern piece number 4. This is the side, front, and back. You want to cut 2 of these out of your fabric. Now pattern piece number 16, this is the undersleeve. You want to cut 2 of these out of your fabric. Now pattern piece number 15, this is the upper sleeve. You want to cut 2 of these out of your fabric as well. Pattern piece number 14, this is the back facing, and it has a shape right like this, and then the other one mirrored is going to be like this, that goes this way. That's how you have a full piece. So you want to cut 2 of these out of your lining. Pattern piece number 18, your undersleeve lining. You want to cut 2 of these out of your lining fabric. Pattern piece 17, upper sleeve lining. You want to cut 2 out of your lining. Pattern piece number 3, your upper pocket lining. You want to cut 1. And this is the breast pocket I was telling you that only goes on the left side. And then we have pattern piece number 6, your lower pocket lining. You want to cut 2 of these out of your lining. Next we have pattern piece number 12. This is the under collar. You want to cut 2 out of fabric and 2 out of inner facing. And when it comes to this pattern piece, you want to make sure that you have that arrow facing parallel. And then pattern piece number 11, your upper collar. You want to cut 1 on the fold of fabric and 1 on the fold of inner facing. Pattern piece number 10, this is the side back facing. You want to cut 2 out of fabric and 2 out of inner facing. Pattern piece number 8, this is your flap. You want to cut 4 out of fabric and 2 out of inner facing. Pattern piece number 5, this is your lower welts. You want to cut 4 out of fabric and 4 out of interfacing. Pattern piece number 7, you want to cut 2 out of fabric, and this is your lower pocket facing. And then last but not least, we have pattern piece number 2. This is your upper welt. You want to cut 1 out of fabric and 1 out of interfacing. Okay, so once you cut all of your pattern pieces out of fabric and also the lining and also interface the correct pieces, we can begin order of construction. So before I get started, I just want to show you 2 interfacing pieces additional that I made to have a little bit more stability on the hem of my sleeves. Now, if I move this away, you can see that it's the placket and also the hem, and on this side the placket and hem. Now, the way I did that, the hem allowance is 1.5 inches. So you just want to measure up 1.5 inches, and then you just want to go 5/8 of an inch more than where that dot is. And also you have a dot over here on whatever size that you did. Mine is a 38, so we'll go 5/8 of an inch wider. The same on this side. And then once you do that, you will get a piece that covers like this. And don't forget to get the slant here for the turn in and all that. So these pieces right here, you want to cut out the interfacing, and you want to interface both the hem of your undersleeve and your upper sleeve. Now, once again, this is an additional work, and it is optional, but it will give you a little bit better result than not doing it at all, depending on the type of fabric you use. So once you put the interfacing on the hem, it should look like this. I have black interfacing because my fabric is dark, so that's why mine is not white. So also too, I came down just a bit on the sleeve cap down to about, let me measure down and see exactly, it's about 10 inches on my upper sleeve to give me a little bit more stability on my upper sleeve. And then also on the undersleeve, I did the same exact thing. I came down, let me see from the top, I came down about 8 inches. Now, once I sew this together, you can see that the interfacing will match up right here. So this is just an additional piece. I didn't even make pieces for it. I just marked it out and measured on my interfacing. So I won't have to make too many pieces, but this is something that will help with the construction of the jacket, because this is not going to be a full-on tailored jacket. These are a bit of shortcuts. If you don't know how to tailor a jacket from start to finish, these are some of the details that's going to help you get a nice jacket. But make sure you get weft interfacing. You want good quality that can grip on to the fabric after you heat it and won't come out. And then if you look here, this is the back piece. I came down just a little bit. I can measure here too. This says 9 inches. So you want to just come down a bit on your back piece. You don't want to come lower than your lining. You don't want to be able to see it. So I did just above my lining so you won't see it and get a good quality back piece. Okay, so this is the very last thing I wanted to show you before we got started. So if you can tell that I interface a bit of my front piece, it don't call for interfacing if you look on the actual pattern, but I feel like it helps a lot to put a good sturdy front piece with interfacing, just the whole shape, especially in the chest. Now, if there was a full-on build out, you would have horsehair and felt and all these different type of materials to help construct the jacket in a really good quality way. This jacket is meant to be oversized, not too formal, have lining, so you don't have to put those many details into this jacket. But if you do have those skills, by all means, put it in here. So if you can see that I did curve out a little bit, not to have it too structured here on the side, but mostly here in the front and also where the lapel is. And then I did a strip here for that welt pocket, because we will be cutting into this once we attach the side back piece. Okay, and the last thing, I did a piece of twill tape. You remember the line that I made you draw on the actual pattern piece? That's the line that you want to place this side of the twill tape just underneath it. Okay, now the reason for that is once we fold back and press it, it will prevent your jacket from rolling too far to the side. Okay, that twill tape is going to make it a little bit more sturdy and give it a little better construction and better look. Okay, so now all those details are out the way. Let's go ahead with the very first step. We're going to take our front piece, and as you can see, we have that welt pocket down here at the bottom, and we're going to take our side and back piece. You see the continuation here on this piece. So what we're going to do is right sides facing, making sure that we match up all of our notches, and we're going to pin. Okay, so we're going to start at the top 5/8 of an inch and go all the way down to the hem. Okay, so you want to backstitch at the beginning and also at the end. I started at the very corner, leaving space. So when, as you can see, my 5/8 of an inch is here, and about the time I get out that corner, it's going to be even up with the 5/8 of an inch. Okay, so moving right along, before we head to the pressing table, we're going to come down, I would say right here where the undersleeve starts. You see you have the loop, and like right here, you want to catch the seam allowance that's on the front, not the underarm seam allowance. And we're just going to make a little clip, but not through your stitching. Okay. So that's going to allow us to open up the seam from this point all the way down to the hem. Now let's go to your pressing table, and we're going to press this seam open, so give it a good press. Okay, so we're back from the pressing table. As you can see, the seam here before the slit is facing this way, and then down here is pressed open. So now we're going to put this to the side for just a moment, and I'm going to grab all the pieces that we're going to need to work out our double welt with the flap. So first things first, you want to grab your facing for your pocket bag for that lower pocket, and you want to place it, and there should be a placement line. I put notches just so I could indicate that. And because of my fabric is a little thick, I didn't tuck under a 1/4 inch. I just end up serging it, as you can see right here. So that will secure the bottom here. So I'm gonna grab the pins, and then I'm going to pin around. Okay, so the very first thing I'm gonna do, I'm going to just stitch across here to secure the facing onto the lining, and then I'm just going to base around the side, across the top, and then along the other side here. Now while we're at the machine, I want to go ahead and do our flap as well. Okay, so right side's facing, we're going to pin around the curve across the bottom, and then the other side, keeping the top open. So for our welts, we're going to go ahead and fold them wrong sides facing, and then we're just going to give them a really good press, this one, and then also the second one. So I'm going to put these to the side so you can press those, and then let's head to the machine and stitch these. You don't see any pins because I've already stitched it. I just forgot to press record. So what you're going to do is just going to add stitch this side here onto the fabric. Change your length to a basting stitch. We're just going to base around the sides. Usually I do a 1/2 inch for basting sometimes. Okay, just like that. And then now, as you can see, I've already stitched down this one as well. Be sure to change your basting stitch to a regular stitch. We're going to start on this side. Pivot. Okay, so I'm back from the machine. I went ahead and put my pocket facing on the lower pocket with that placement, and I went ahead and pressed my welts just like this. And then now we're gonna go ahead and trim a little bit on the flap to get it ready for the pocket. So I'm gonna go ahead and cut into the corner just like that. And then for the curve, I'm just gonna cut some clips. Be sure not to cut through your stitching. Little triangles like this. And I'll do one more here. I'm gonna trim this down close to like 3/8 and maybe like a 1/4 inch around the curve. Okay, so now we're gonna turn this. Grab your point turner. Okay. Now you want to head to your pressing table, lay this flat, and give this a really good press. Okay, so while we're here, I'm gonna go ahead and turn this upside down, and then the wrong side facing up, so we have the facing to the bottom. So I'm gonna grab one of my welt pockets and overlap the facing over the welt, making sure that's as aligned at the corners, the top, and also the sides. And then we're going to pin. Okay, just like that. So we're going to head to the machine and we're going to base stitch. Now we're just going to base these together, and also this is going to be a guide to when we actually attach it to the front piece, which should be 5/8 of an inch. And like I said, we're going to base this down. Okay, we're back from the machine. As you can see, we have this base down at that seam allowance. And like I said, I didn't go dot to dot. I went all the way through. I'm going to show you why we have these dots in just a bit. And then we're going to go ahead and base the flap onto the welt. Now we want to turn the welt where the raw edge is facing down. And the same thing for the flap. Now this is for the left side. Basically, it's going to hang just like this on the left. So that curve needs to be to the inside, and that squared off portion should be to the side seam. Okay, so but since I'm having it here so I can show you, you want to, it looks like it's the right side, but it's the left side. Turn this up, making sure that the raw edges are matching. And there should be dots you should stay in between, which is 5/8 of an inch on both sides. So let me go ahead and pin. Okay, so let's add to the machine. We're gonna go ahead and baste all the way across using 5/8 of an inch seam allowance. Okay, so now I have my front piece. This is the front. This right here is the back and side piece here. So I'm going to take my based welt and also lining, and I'm going to match up those dots with the corners first. Okay, so I like to put my needle in first. Now you can see the needle. Put that needle right where that corner is, and then you can pin. And I'm gonna continue pinning all the way across, making sure that that dot matches up with that corner. But also you want to make sure that basting stitch that we put matches up all the way across, and then we're gonna pin. Okay. Now I did it two ways. You can do it this way here, which makes it easier to kind of line it up. But if you do it horizontal like this, it'll keep it from shifting. Okay, so we're going to head to the machine and we're going to follow that basting stitch. But as we stitch, we're just going to double check, making sure that our basting stitch matches up with the marking that we have. Okay, so I'm removing my pin, put my needle in, And we want to be as accurate as possible when it comes to matching up that basting stitch with that line. Back to the beginning, also at the end. Okay, so we're back from the machine. I'm just going to flip this like this, making sure that all of the seam allowance is out the way. And I'm just going to trim this down to about 1/4 inch. And now I'm gonna pop it back out. Okay, so now the top remaining line, we want to go ahead with the raw edge facing down, and you can see that the flap is facing up like this. We're going to go ahead and put the edge of flap right where that marking is with the corner of that bounding box. I'm going to pin. And then now I'm just going to make sure that we stay the course all the way down. Then we're going to head to the machine. We're going to stitch on one side of the flap all the way across, stopping at the other side of the flap where your marking is. Back stitch at the beginning and also at the end. So we have this stitch down. We're back from the machine. So now I'm just going to turn everything down, only focusing on trimming this down to 1/4 inch. Okay, so now it should look just like this. Now we're going to go ahead and start slashing so we can go and make this official. So now I'm going to turn it to the side. I'm going to fold it in half right here, making sure it's flat and even on both sides. And I'm just going to make a little slit in the center. And then now I'm going to cut until I get to 5/8 of an inch away from where I start with the stitching. Slash. Okay, so that's about 5/8 away from where we need to stop. And then now I'm going to fold back some of this, some of that seam allowance here, and we're going to cut diagonally to our markings. But I just want to note a tip. We're only going to cut into the fabric. We're not going to cut any of the welts or none of that. And we're going to cut to where our stitching is if it doesn't match up with our dot. So we're supposed to cut to our dot, but if it don't match up where our stitching is, you want to cut to the stitching, okay? Okay, so it should look like this with a little triangle, as you can see. Spin it around, we're going to do the exact same thing to the other side. Okay, and as you can see, we have a little triangle right here too. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn everything to the inside, including this piece here, the lining. You can also tuck in those corners on both sides, the little welt ends. So when you turn the flap in, you should have just 1/4 inch of that welt, just like this. Okay, so you want to make sure everything is laying flat once you turn it in. And also I have the flap inside just so you can just only see the welt, but this design you can also bring the flap out and have it just like this too. But for right now we want to make sure everything is pressed well, So I want to tuck that in. So head to your pressing table, give this a good press. We're going to come back and continue. Okay, so moving right along, we want to give this a good press. Everything looks good. And then now I'm just going to fold the upper part of the jacket back like this. And now we're just looking at the welt and also the flap portion. Okay. And then now I'm just going to go ahead and take the pocket bag underneath. Well, first let me just turn this around so you can see the pocket bag. And then now we're just going to turn this up. Now we have a fold line at the bottom here. I can see mine because I have a notch. I'm gonna go ahead and pin that just to make sure that I have it folded evenly. And then there's also a notch that we have. So now the top of this should be that seam allowance. Now we're going to make sure that we don't pin the flap. Okay, so you want to make sure. So maybe I might just pin the flap corner like this to keep it out the way. But if it make it too bulky for you, you don't have to do that. So now I'm just going to turn this right back. Okay, so now I can see the other side. So if you need to, you can put like a pin across the top. But we're going to head to the machine and we're going to start right where we slashed into. We're going to start right there in that corner and go all the way until we get to the other corner. Now this is going to secure the very top of the pocket bag. Okay, so like I said, we're going to start stitching right at that slash corner, back stitch, and also back stitch at the beginning, also at the end. And we're going to stop right here where that slash is on this side. Okay, so moving right along, we stitched across here. So now I'm going to throw that back up. And then next, I'm going to turn to the side here. And you should see where that triangle is. And also the welts fold touching, meeting here in the center. So you want to make sure those are touching, meeting in the center with that triangle there. So we're just going to head to the machine. We're going to stitch over that a few times and we're going to continue all the way 5/8 of an inch till we get to the bottom. And then we're going to fold this one to the side. And then we have the same thing on this side. We have the triangle cut out from the slits. And we have the welts that we want to make sure are touching at the folds to have a clean stitch all the way through, all the way down to the bottom using 5/8 of an inch seam allowance. Okay, so let's head to the machine and do one at a time. Okay, so this right here is very important because this right here is going to close out the side of your welt and make it look really clean. But also you want to make sure to not stitch down your flap, which is on the inside. So if you need to push your flap towards the inside, it might make it a little bulky, but it will pay off because you don't want to stitch that down. You want to be able to adjust your flap to go inside or outside that pocket. So now we're going to start right here at the top of the triangle, do a few stitches to secure it, and then go all the way down. And like I said, you don't want to leave a gap in between your welts. So if you look here, you want to make sure that your welts are touching at the folds. Okay, just like that. Now we're going to do the other side the same way. So this side, we're starting at the bottom and working our way up. So before we get up here, we're almost done. We are almost done. Make sure that those welts are touching, making sure there's no gaps in between, and make sure that that triangle is laying flat right here. And please do not stitch down your flap on the inside. few times to secure it. So we're back from the machine. As you can see, this side is from the wrong side. Only thing we have to do is attach our bias tape around here and in here, and then also on both sides of that seam allowance here, and then also here, just to give it a really clean look. So then on this side, you have the double welt. And then if you want to just casual the jacket up, you can pull the flap out and voila, you have a double welt end flap just like this. Okay. I will show you how to put on bias tape, but for the purpose of the video, I won't be doing all of this on camera. So just to give you an idea on what this will look like, this is how it looks once you have that bias tape. You see how clean that is? And then we also have it on both sides here. So once you do one lower welt pocket, you want to do the other one the same exact way. And then now we're going to go ahead and do our back facing like this, and I will show you how to do the bias tape. Okay, so with the bias tape, you want to get an extra wide double fold. Now this is pretty basic. You can make your own and do all that stuff, but this is straight out of Joann's, inexpensive, and it coordinates with my fabric. Now one side is going to be just a tad bit longer, okay, and that's the side that goes underneath. Now we have two ways of that you can do this. Now you want to have the shorter side on the top so that stitch can catch on the bottom for sure. So usually you can you can just open it up, place your piece in there that you want the side that you want to do, and then make sure that you have it all the way in, pin it, and then you can just edge stitch right on that fold just so you know that you're getting it. You can do it just on the other side of it because it's supposed to catch, but if you want to make sure it catches, I will be edge stitching on that fold. Okay, so for the next step, we're going to be putting bias on the unnotched long side. There should be a notch right here, as you can see. So we're going to be doing this side and the corner here, stopping 1 inch from the dot. So I flip it up. Here's my dot. I measure 1 inch out. I can transfer that to this side here, which is about right there. I'm just trying to mark out how much I'm going to actually need. Okay, I'm gonna give myself about another inch. So I'm gonna start at the top and come down. So with the small side facing up, I'm going to open it up like this, and then open it up one more time just on this side here where we have that fold line. Now this fold line right here in the center is going to be my stitching line, and I'm going to put that right up against that raw edge. So you can pin if you need to. I'm going to put a few in here. Okay, now let's head to the machine. So let's stitch right where that crease is. Now before I get all the way to the end, I'm going to stop about 3/8 of an inch before I get to this side here, and then I'm going to pivot and then go into the corner. Okay, so now I'm going to stitch directly into the corner. Okay, so now it's going to kind of look like this because of that corner. You open it all the way up, you stitch, you went to the corner. Now you want to have it diagonal like this because of that stitch into the corner. It should look like that. Hold your finger here, and then you want to fold that back. Okay, so our stopping point is right here. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead, start at the actual corner. Okay, just like this. Okay, so now I want to make this edge clean, so I'm just going to cut it off maybe like a 1/4 inch so I can get a nice little fold. Okay, so now that little 1/4 inch that I made just a little bit longer, I'm just gonna fold it to the inside to have a clean finish on this edge here. And then now I'm just going to go ahead and fold this to the outside like that, making sure that I tuck in on this side. So you see that corner is nice clean, but there's a little excess that we just have to grab and push to one side. Okay, once you push it to that one side, it'll look kind of like this before we stitch it down. Make sure to take that excess and push it to one side. And then now I'm just going to go ahead and edge stitch right on that fold. Pivot. Okay, and voila, we have it nicely put on. And then the back side looks just like this. Okay, so moving right along, we're gonna go ahead and take our facing and turn it right sides facing like this, matching up that notch and also the dot. Now you're just gonna head to the machine and just stitch starting here all the way down to the hem using 5/8 of an inch seam allowance. Okay, so now we did that. We're gonna go ahead and keep the seam allowance facing the right, and we're just gonna fold this facing over, and we're gonna do some understitching. Basically, if you don't know what understitching is, we're just going to edge stitch on the facing side, but very close to the seam. Okay, I'm gonna fold this up. I'm just going to trim just a little bit, maybe take a 1/4 inch off. And then now we're just going to turn this to the inside, just like that. Give it a good press, and we're just going to baste it right here. Okay, so do that. And then once you finish, you want to do the other one the same exact way. Okay, so moving right along, as you can see, we applied the bias tape here, and then also here on the bottom, and then around the pocket bag. Now, I showed you how to do the mitered corner, which will help you on these corners here. And also, if you don't want to do the bias tape, you can always serge. I mean, this is your jacket, you know, depending on what you want your inside to look like, you can do that. Okay, so now we're going to go ahead and grab our upper pocket for the left side. So I'm gonna go ahead and try to redraw my markings. I can barely see them. There we go. Okay, so that's how it should look, your binding box. So now we're gonna go ahead and focus on our welt pocket for now. So I like to keep the paper on the welt pocket just so you can see exactly how it's supposed to be going. You don't want it upside down. And the point is basically to the right. So what I'm going to do is turn right sides facing like this. Pin on both sides. Now I want you to head to the machine, and you're going to stitch here using 5/8 of an inch seam allowance, and then here on the other side the same exact way. Do that, come back, and we'll continue. Okay, we're back from the machine. I'm going to go ahead and trim this down just a little bit, starting from the corner, working my way outward. Now we're going to turn this right side out. Use your point turner. So you want to go ahead and give this a really good press. Once you give it a press, we're going to turn it upside down just like this. And we're going to take our pocket bag, as you can see right here. This is the front side. I'm going to turn it upside down where the bottom is, and you can see the wrong side. And we're basically going to align this with the raw edges meeting, and we're going to base this across using 5/8 of an inch seam allowance, stopping at both sides of the welt, as you can see right here. Okay, so give it a good press and then base it across the bottom of the lining like this. Okay, I'm back from the machine. I went ahead and did my basting stitch. So if you look on this side, it'll be based just like this, 5/8 of an inch. So now we're gonna go ahead and bring over the left front. And then now we're going to perfectly place this down. I'm gonna put a needle right where my stitching stops, which is where my dot is on the other side. And I'm gonna place that right where my dot is on that particular line. And then I'm just gonna take my time making sure that that basting stitch aligns up right with my binding box on the bottom, not the top. Okay, so we just want to make sure we go all the way across straight. So now let's head to the machine and we can stitch this down all the way across. So now I'm going to put my needle right where that marking is. Turn your basting stitch back into a straight stitch. Okay, so moving right along, as you can see, we stitched it down. So now I'm just going to fold this back and I'm just going to trim off some of this. Trim off about 1/4 inch. Okay. Okay, now as you can see, we did a pretty good job lining it up. So just like we did the welts when we did the slash at the bottom pockets, I'm gonna turn just like this, and we're gonna do a little slash right in the center of that binding box. Okay, so now we're going to cut until we get about 5/8 of an inch from the side of that binding box, and we're going to turn diagonally just like we did the other welts, and we're going to cut to where the stitching stops. None more, none less. And then to the top, we don't have any stitching, so we're going to go right where the marking is and we're going to stop. So now we have a triangle on this side, as you can see right here. Turn around, we're going to do the same thing on the other side. Okay, so now what we're going to do is we're going to turn the lining to the inside, keeping the welt on the outside, just like this. And we're going to give this a really good press. Turn it to the wrong side. We want to make sure those triangles are facing outward, just like that. So give that a good press. Come back and we'll continue. Okay, I gave it a good press. Move right along. I'm going to turn it with the right side facing up, just like this. I'm just gonna fold back in the portion at the top that's not attached to anything. I'm gonna slide it up, and you might want to kind of move the bottom down just a little bit so you have room to work. So I'm gonna match these corners up with the top of that binding box. We're probably gonna have about 1/4 inch at the top left. Okay, so now It's going to look just like this, and we're basically going to start where that slash cutout is in that corner and go all the way to the other side. And we're going to be using 5/8 of an inch seam allowance because this right here is 3/8, and then we have that 1/4 inch of lining sticking out at the top. Okay, so let's head to the machine and stitch this down. Back to the beginning and also at the end. Okay, so we're back from the machine. As you can see, I went ahead and stitched this and I pressed it up just like that. And then now on this side where we see the welt, make sure everything is laying flat. You want to give it a good press. And then now we're just going to go one side at a time. I'm going to turn it just on one side, making sure that we get the triangle here. And then this side, you have the triangle right there. You want to make sure you keep that facing out. And we're just going to pin the sides. Okay, so let's go back to the machine and we're going to stitch 5/8 of an inch on both sides of our pocket bag. Okay, so you want to make sure you have your welt pocket out the way on the inside here so you can have a flat surface. Then we're going to stitch across the triangle and then go all the way down. Now we're going to do the other side. Start at the bottom on this side and work our way up. Once you give it a good press, you can see we have a nice finished bag here. One last thing, we have to secure the ends of this particular welt. So you want to make sure that you have it adjusted, have it up. Now I'm going to give you two options. Now you can edge stitch with the machine very close to the edge on both sides and you'll be done. But for me, I don't want the stitching to show, so I'm just going to hand stitch this closed and secure it on both sides. And then I'm just going to give that a good press and I'll be done. Okay, so go ahead and finish that up and we're going to continue with our back piece. Okay, so moving right along, I have my back pieces, and before you sew them together, it's a perfect time to do your bias tape. And you want to do it on the center back here and then also here. Okay, so right side's facing, turn it up. And you might notice this white interfacing, it's the same as the black that I have here and here. I just happen to have the white one handy when I wanted to do the hem. So I took the back vent pattern piece for the facing and I cut out an interface and I put it on both sides here and then also here, as you can see. And then I just did a strip 1.5 inch of the hem just to put a little bit more stability and weight on that hem. So having interfacing at these key places, good interfacing at these key places will bring your garment to life, especially at the end when we start pressing it. Okay, so like I said, right sides facing, I'm just going to line them up and going to pin starting at the top all the way down to the hem. Okay, so let's head to the machine. We're going to stitch using 5/8 of an inch seam allowance starting here all the way down to the hem. Okay, so we're back from the machine. As you can see, we went ahead and pressed that seam open. It looks really nice. You want to give that a really good press all the way down to the hem, as you can see. And then now you want to grab your front and side back, and we're going to attach it to that back piece. So there should be a marking, as you can see right here on this side. You want to put a pin through that here. And then we're just going to secure the end here. And then the same along the side. Should be 2 notches. Okay, so now what we're gonna do is we're gonna head to the machine. We're gonna stitch this down using 5/8 of an inch seam allowance. We're gonna get to our marking, our dot, pivot, and then go all the way to the end. Okay, so let's head to the machine and do that. Okay, now that we have this side, you want to do the other side the same exact way. Okay, so we have the back and also the side back piece, and then the front pieces here. It's kind of out of frame. So we're supposed to be pressing this seam here towards the back. But before we do that, we want to cut into our seam allowance, both of them here, just above that double notch here, which would be a good placement. So you just want to cut it. Make sure not to cut through your stitching. Okay. So we're going to keep that this way, and we're going to press the rest of the seam allowance all the way down to where we get to the vent towards the back. Okay. And then the same thing on this side, the double notch right here. Okay, just like that. And then you just want to give this a really good press. And then once you press it, you want to go ahead and get your bias tape. And we're going to do bias tape starting from where that slash is here all the way down to, we're going to rotate it here to right there. Okay. So go ahead and do that, come back, and we'll continue. Okay, so I'm back and moving right along. And also, I went ahead and stitched across from dot to dot here where the vents are. Now, you can do it looking at it this way, or you could turn it around and mark it here and stitch down. Only difference is you'll have your bobbing on this side if you do it from the other view, but it is easier to actually see what you're looking at. Okay, so once you give that a good press, we can move on and work out our shoulders. So the right side's facing. You want to turn the front onto the back at the shoulders like this, and we're going to pin. There should be a notch. Okay, so super easy. Head to the machine, stitch across your shoulders using 5/8 of an inch seam allowance. Once you do that, come back and we'll continue. Okay, so I'm back from the machine, and also I pressed that seam open at the shoulders. So next we're gonna go ahead and reinforce the neckline here. We're going to stitch about 1 inch this way, and then we're gonna pivot at the dot, the marking, and then about 1 inch this way. Then we're gonna break and cut our threads. And then we're gonna hop over here about 1 inch out. We're gonna go to the dot, pivot, and then we're gonna go all the way to the center back. And then we're gonna break and cut our threads, and then we're gonna start on this side and then go the other way. All right, so let's head to the machine and reinforce the neckline. Okay, so I made my stitch a little bit wider because this is a reinforcement. It don't have to be a short stitch. Pivot. And then we're gonna go over to this dot here. Now we're gonna swing around and pivot until we get to the center back. Okay, now we're gonna do the same thing on the other side. I went ahead and put my markings on the front side just so I can see it because we're going in a different direction. Pivot. And then now we're just going to do this last marking. Pivot all the way to the center back. Okay, so moving right along, I'm gonna go ahead and take my scissors and I'm gonna slash right into those markings without cutting through my thread. Okay, just like that. Okay, so now that we have that prep, we want to put that to the side and we're going to work on our undercollar. Okay, so we're right sides facing. We're going to go ahead and place them just like this and pin at the center back. We should have 2 notches right there. All right, so now just head to your machine. We're going to stitch here using 5/8 of an inch seam allowance. Do that, come back and we'll continue. Okay, so now I have my neck edge with the right sides facing up. And then now I'm just going to take my undercollar and I'm going to place these 2 dots here, right where I have my slashes at, where those markings are at. Make sure everything is flat. I'm just going to match it up and I'm going to pin. Pin the center back. And then this marking right here is for that shoulder seam. Pin the other side the same way. So now what we're going to do, we're going to head to the machine. We're going to stitch across from dot to dot, pivot, go all the way across the other side, pivot again, and then end up here at this dot here. Okay, so I'll put my needle in the first position. We'll go ahead and back stitch. Okay, pivot again. Okay, so we're back from the machine. As you can see, we have the collar attached. I have it upside down because I'm going to go ahead and put some little clips in it. I'm going to put just some small clips in it. Usually I do it around the curves of the neck so it can spread out just a little bit. Might do one right here. Make sure you don't cut through your stitching though. Okay, so now we're just going to head to the machine and you're going to press that seam open just like this. And then right here on this corner, cut just a little bit off here. That way when we press it open, we won't get any bulkiness right here. It'll just overlay. Okay, do this to the other side. So head to your pressing table and press this seam open all the way across the neckline. Okay, so we're moving right along with our sleeve. So just some details I want you to see. You want to do a stay stitching here just to keep this from growing as we're working. And then on the sleeve cap, you want to do 2 rows of ease stitching. And we're just going to basically ease it in. Obviously, ease stitching, you back stitch at the beginning, but not at the end. And then once you pull a little bit, it should ease and then just spread out that ease evenly to the other side. And then it should curl up on you a bit. And then just a little bit on the longer side of the sleeve where you see the placket at. Just a little bit, and we can make adjustments later. Okay, so this is how it looks. Just eased in just a little bit. Okay, so we're right sides facing. We're going to do this side first. Let me turn around so I can pin. I'm just going to pin from the hem all the way up. Okay, so head to the machine. You just want to stitch from here to here using 5/8 of an inch seam allowance. So do that, come back and we'll continue. Okay, so we're back from the machine and you want to go ahead and press that seam open. Next, we're going to work on this corner here. So there should be 2 markings. You want to take this and right side facing, you want to fold it onto itself, just like this, and we're going to pin. So we're going to stitch from the fold all the way down to the end using 3/8 of an inch seam allowance. And then while we're there, we're going to take this side here and we're going to fold that hem up, which is 1.5 inches. So let me go and take my ruler. Okay, there we go. And I'm going to pin. And then here we're going to stitch from the fold all the way up to that raw edge there using 3/8 of an inch seam allowance. Okay, so let's head to the machine and do both of these. And now the other side. Okay, go ahead and trim both corners. Give it a good press and turn it right side out. Okay, so I went ahead and stitched those down and then open those seams up and press them. And then now we're going to take your point turner and turn it right side out. Okay, so now you want to go to your pressing table and make sure you press this down just like this, that hem allowance all the way across. And on this side here, you can make sure you continue that 3/8 of an inch right there. So go give it a good press, and then you can just do a base stitch on that fold line to keep it in place as we continue construction. Okay, so moving right along, as you can see, we press here, press that really well, and then now we're going to turn it right side up and then right sides facing. Now we're going to pin here, making sure we match all the key places, the notches, and also the markings. Double notch here. And then here, we want to match up the marking at the bottom. And then also we want to keep this 3/8 of an inch folded edge. It's not going to go all the way to the edge here. It's going to stop at that marking, which is 3/8 of an inch away from the edge. Pin. So I gathered a little bit too much. Let me remove some of that ease. Okay, so now we're going to head to the machine. We're going to stitch all the way down using 5/8 of an inch. Get to your dot, your marking, pivot, and we're going to go until we get to that folded edge right there. Pivot. Okay, so we're back from the machine, and now we're just going to clip right to our marking without cutting our stitching. And then now we're just going to open up the seam and give it a really good press all the way up to here. And then after you give it a press, you want to make sure we hand stitch this portion right here closed to the placket, and then this side right here, the placket underneath, we want to make sure that's laying flat, and we're going to stitch it here so it won't move. Okay, so go ahead, press that open, hand stitch this down, and hand stitch that down. Come back and we'll continue. Okay, so we went ahead and hand stitch, gave this a really good press, and I'm going to turn it right side out. Okay, just like this. Now this is the sleeve that goes on the left side. And then now we're going to go ahead and attach this to the jacket. So the best way to attach it is to lay the sleeve on the side that it's supposed to be. I found two markings. Okay, so now that we have the marking here and marking there, go ahead and pin there first. And we're going to continue all the way around. Now with the sleeve cap, if you gathered too much, you can always let it out if you didn't tie it off. So we're just going to see the dot at the top is for that shoulder seam. Dots here, we should match up under the underarm. Match up all your notches. Okay, so let's head to the machine and we're going to stitch this down all the way around using 5/8 of an inch seam allowance. Okay, remember the back stitch at the beginning and also the end. So when you come to the portion where we had to slash from here down, and you want to make sure you keep that seam allowance towards that raw edge here. Okay, so now you want to do your other sleeve the same exact way. And then also you want to do one more stitch a 1/4 inch away from that first stitch towards the raw edge. So do that and we'll continue. Okay, so moving right along, as you can see, we have the sleeves attached. And I'm not going to turn it right side out yet because we do have to put the lining on. So I'm going to keep it just like this for right now. So we're going to move to the back facing, which is the lining, and then also the front facing. Okay, so these are the lining pieces, the back facing. And you have two options. You can turn under 3/8 of an inch and then do top stitching on the hem, which is the curved part at the bottoms here. Or you can do bias tape like I did. So once you prep that, make a decision on what you want to do. We're going to overlap them, and you can do right over left, left over right. It's going to be the same exact kind of look. But there is a notch here in the back of the neck there. Let's go ahead and pin. And then when you overlay them like this, there's a notch. Okay. Okay, so now you see, now you see that this is the shoulder and then this is the back facing. So now we're going to head to the machine and we're going to baste here around the neck and then right here at in the middle of the shoulder just to secure it. So go ahead and baste that. Okay, so while you're at the machine, you want to do that, but then also you want to finish off your front facing just here, not the center front where you have the lapel. You want to do it right here on the side, and you have the option. You can turn under 3/8 of an inch, just like the hem of your back facing, or you can do bias tape like I did. So I went ahead and attached that. So go ahead and do that at the machine while you do your basting. Okay, as you can see, we're back from the machine. We basted around here, and then now we're going to take our facings, our front facings, and we're going to align them at the notches and we're going to pin. Okay, so let's head to the machine. We're going to stitch across both shoulders using 5/8 of an inch seam allowance, and then you want to press those open and then come back and we'll continue. Okay, so we're back from the machine. We press those seams open, and then also I went ahead and did a reinforcing stitch here, just like we did on the front piece, here and here. And then from here, pivoting at that marking all the way to the back like that. Okay, so once again, we're just going to cut into those corners like that without cutting through our stitching. Okay. So I'm going to turn this around so we can attach our top collar. Okay, so this is the top collar here. This is the right side, the wrong side. I went ahead and basted along the bottom here where we have the two notches. And then now this portion here is the neckline. We're going to place our two markings right sides facing, and then we're going to place these two markings right where those markings end up, and then we're going to pin. And there also should be a notch for you to match up. Now that we have it pinned, you want to head to the machine, and we're going to stitch this the same exact way that we did the jacket and the undercollar. We start here, pivot at the corners, go all the way, pivot at the corners here, and we're going to end up right there. It might be better for you to turn it this way so we can see where those slits are to know exactly where to pivot, which is very helpful. All right, so let's stitch this down. Okay, I put my needle right where that first dot is. Okay, once again, we're just going to clip into the neckline without cutting through the stitching. Now head to your pressing table, and we're going to basically do the same exact thing, nothing different. We're just going to go and press all of this seam open all the way across. Okay, so now I have my jacket. I turned it right side out, and we went ahead and pressed the facing, the front and back facing. This is the right side, as you can see. Now next we're going to place them right sides facing. And there should be 2 notches on the collar for us to match up. Pin there first. We're just going to pin across the top. And now when we get to this first little section, we want to pin this right here separately, keeping the lapel part free, as you can see. So when we stitch, we're just going to start here, go up, and then stop at the other part on this side. And this is a whole separate piece that we're going to start at. So let's continue pinning the other side. Okay, now that we've pinned this separately, we're going to start again at this corner. Then we're going to start pinning this lapel area. There should be a notch center front here. Now the facing should extend 5/8 of an inch past this corner here at the bottom where the hem is, just so you know. Okay, so I'm just gonna demonstrate from the top. We're gonna start on one end of where that collar is in that corner. Go up, pivot, go across the top, pivot again, come down to this side, and then we're gonna cut and break our threads, and then we're gonna reposition so we can sew starting back at that corner, go up to that dot, pivot, and come all the way down to the hem, pivot right here 5/8 of an inch away from the bottom, and then we're going to come all the way to the end here. Okay, you want to pin the other side the same exact way, and then we're going to head to the machine and knock this out. Okay, so if you look closely, this is the collar here. I literally got this lapel portion out the way, and we're just going to go up, pivot into the other side. Okay, so now we got the collar. Now we're about to reposition and then go down one side at a time. So now since we stitched this, we want to kind of put it out the way for right now. We want to find our marking, put our needle down, and then we can kind of move that first pin. Remember the back is at the beginning, also the end. You can reinforce that corner there by backstitching a few times. Last pivot across the hem. Okay, so once you do this side, you want to do the other side the same exact way. Okay, now we're going to do some trimming. You don't want to go too close, but you do need to trim at the corners, and then come in here and kind of trim some of that down, starting wide and then going closer to that edge just a bit. And then the same thing on this side, and then we're just going to trim some of this off here. Okay, for the lapel tip, we're just going to trim some of that. Make sure you don't cut nothing else but the seam allowance. Okay, now for the hem, we're going to trim a 1/4 inch away from the stitching, and we're going to stop 5/8 of an inch before we get to that edge here. So I'm going to go ahead and mark that out. That's 5/8 of an inch before we get to that edge. Okay, so now that we trim this side, we're going to trim the other side the same exact way. Okay, so now that I trimmed all the seam allowance, we're going to turn this to the inside, right side out. Remember to grab your point turner and point all your corners out. Now, if you found it difficult to get a nice little point, you can always go back and trim a little bit more off here. Now remember, you don't want to cut too close, but sometimes you have to just slightly trim off one side or so to get a nice point when you turn it around. There we go. That's a nice little point, as you can see. There we go. Okay, so now that we turn it right side out, you want to give this a really good press. And also we're gonna do some hand stitching right here. As you can see, you wanna lift up that facing and connect those seam allowances here. And we're just gonna do a loose hand stitching starting on one side of the neckline all the way down to this side right here, as you can see, just like that. Okay, so go ahead and do that hand stitching, turn it around, and then we're gonna give it a really good press. Okay, so moving right along, went ahead and hand stitch in between those seams from here to here. And then as you can see, I have the front facing and the back facing already pinned on the armhole. Now before we stitch this down, this is the time to insert any shoulder pads or any kind of felt that you want to actually put here. I didn't have felt, but I had something similar to it, which was some heavy wool. So if you don't have a shoulder pad, you don't want it too bulky on your shoulder, you have broad shoulders, you could do something like this. This is a 6 by 2 inch piece of fabric. Now this is sort of like felt, but it's not felt. It's a thick piece of wool fabric. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to just open up the pins real quick, and I'm going to insert this to line up with the raw edge. All right. Now this is just going to give me just a little tad bit more stability on the shoulder. Pin this back. And then the same thing on this side. I'm just going to remove these pins. Slip this under here. And you want to, once again, match up that raw edge with the fabric. Okay, so just the same way that we put on the sleeve, you just want to take this to the machine and stitch all the way around using 5/8 of an inch seam allowance. Okay, so we're back from the machine. As you can see, went ahead and stitched around the armhole. And then now I took my sleeves outward like this, wrong side out. And now we're just gonna put this to the side and we're gonna work on our sleeve lining. Okay, just a few things to prep on the sleeve lining. We have a easing stitches that we need to do on this side of the upper sleeve lining, and then the sleeve cap. And then here, we want to stitch that 3/8 of an inch till we get to the dot, and we're gonna pivot 5/8 of an inch here. Okay, so once you do your ease stitching, we're going to go ahead and right sides facing. We're going to start on this side here. We have that notch. Okay, just like we did with the sleeves, you want to start here, go all the way down using 5/8 of an inch seam allowance. Once you do that, open up your seams and press them. Okay, we're back from the machine. As you can see, I pressed that seam open. Nice press on top. So now we're going to do right sides facing. Now, we're going to be doing this, but we have to have this dot connected with the dot here with our marking. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put my needle into that dot, and then I'm going to find that marking right in the center. There we go. So now that I know that I have it lined up, and then I'm going to pin and to match up your notches. So I gathered too much. I need to let some of this out. There we go. Okay, now that we have the pin, we're going to start right here, 5/8 of an inch, where that corner is. On the other side, stitch all the way down until we get to our marking, backstitch to cut your threads. Okay, so the 5/8 of an inch won't really start until right here, but you have to set it up where that corner is. And as you keep sewing, you'll see the 5/8 of an inch match up. Okay, so we're back for the machine. As you can see, this is the upper sleeve here. We're gonna cut into that dot right here, and then I'm gonna flip this over, and then we're gonna cut diagonally here on the undersleeve, only on this seam allowance. Okay, just like that. All right, so now we're just going to go to your pressing table, press this open, come back, and we'll continue. Okay, so we're back from the pressing table. What I did was press that 3/8 of an inch here, and then I pressed up here, 5/8 of an inch. Now this is on the upper sleeve. This part right here is the undersleeve. We pressed 3/8 of an inch here on this side, and as you can see, this is basically what it looks like. So what we're gonna do is I'm gonna keep this flapped over like that, and I'm going to pin just the top here like this. And then now we're just going to stitch across using 5/8 of an inch seam allowance here from the dot to the dot here. And we're only going to stitch down this portion here. Okay, so make sure not to stitch onto your sleeve lining up here. Okay, just this little strip right here. Okay, so making sure that we're only sewing this part, backstitch at the beginning, also at the end. As you can see, we have this stitch down, we press that up. And then also I went ahead and pressed 5/8 of an inch on the hem of this sleeve right here. So now I'm just going to turn this right side out. And basically this is how it's going to look. Just like this, we have that stitching with that seam pressed up, and then we have the little slit with the hem allowance turned up 5/8 of an inch. Okay, so now I'm just working with one sleeve at a time. And I have this placket pin just to keep it in place for right now. So before I slip this, I'm not gonna do any slip stitching on camera just because of time, but you do want to press under 5/8 of an inch on the top of the sleeve all the way around that sleeve hole right there. Okay, on the lining. So 5/8 of an inch, basically the seam allowance. You give that a good press. And then once you do that, we're just going to take it and slip it through. Wrong sides are touching. So when you slip stitch this, after you press under that 5/8 of an inch, it should be, you should definitely make sure that you keep all the markings lined up. Like the marking at the top should be right there on that shoulder seam. And before you slip stitch, you might just want to pin it like this in place, and that'll help you, you know what I'm saying, guide you all the way around. Okay, so I'm gonna go ahead and place this right here just so you can get an idea of what it should look like. So once you get it pinned and all in place, you're just gonna slip stitch up here. Okay, so right here, I'm gonna go ahead and take this pin off just so you can see the separation of that placket. So on this side, you want to bring this corner right here and put it right at the corner right here. Okay, not at the very corner right here where you have that 3/8 of an inch fold, right where that raw edge is. We're going to put that right there. And I'm just going to pin for right now, just so I can keep it in place to demonstrate. Now right here, we're going to take this portion and we're just going to put it just up against over that raw edge, and we're going to slip stitch this in place. Okay, so I'm just going to put it in place right now just so it looks like it's been slip stitched. And then the same thing over this side here. You just want to place that up against this portion right here, making sure that you put this side over that raw edge and slip stitch. And then the same thing for the hem all the way around. And this is going to complete a fully lined sleeve. Okay, slip stitch here, and then all the way around. So for the hem, it might be good to just pin about 1/4 inch down from that raw edge underneath, and then you'll be able to lift this up and get a nice slip stitch all the way around. Okay, so once you do the lining to one sleeve, you want to do the other sleeve lining the same exact way. Okay, so after you do the sleeve lining, you want to turn everything right side out, give it a really good press. Make sure you find that roll line here and press it slightly. Don't press it too much. You don't want a crease right here. Sometimes what I do is I'll take like a towel or something, fold it and lay it flat and put it right up against that line and press with a pressing cloth here, just so you don't get a crease. You have a little bit of little thickness right there, so it won't crease all the way down. So now let's move it along to our back vents. I'm just gonna do one side on camera. They're both done the same exact way. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna turn this right sides facing, just like that, and we're gonna pin. And then I'm just gonna make sure that we have the seam allowance 1.5 inches. Okay, so that's gonna be my stitching line. And then for this side, the same thing. Now if you look right here on this portion, which is on the back, the very back piece, the instructions in the pattern don't show this raw edge finished. Now you can come here and then add bias tape just so you can finish that off really well. And then now we're just gonna do the same thing, right sides facing, and the same thing. I'm gonna mark off 1.5 inches. Okay, now let's head to the machine. We're gonna stitch across here, and then we're going to stitch across here. Okay, so now we're just gonna stitch across that 1.5 inch hem allowance, which is on the back vents. And then now for the portion that's connected to the back piece. And as you can see, I went ahead and added bias tape. I just couldn't help myself. And especially because my fabric ravels quite a bit, I need to secure it. Now you want to do the same thing to the other side, and we're going to trim and turn it right side out. Okay, so we're back from the machine. As you can see, we went ahead and stitched that hem allowance here, which is 1.5 inches. So the instruction is going to show you one way, which I'm going to demonstrate, but I'm going to give you another option. So it have us cutting just the facing here. When I mean the facing, just this portion, not all of it. So just the top, and then about 3/8 of an inch from the stitching line we come across, but it don't have us cutting off the twill tape portion, but it don't have us cutting the bias tape. Now the reason being is once you cut into the bias tape, you don't have a secure stitch and it can unravel from the bottom. So they have you pivot and then cut right in front of it. And I'm gonna show you now. So we're gonna trim, I'm gonna cut here, and then we're gonna also cut here, about 3/8 of an inch away, and then we're just gonna cut this little piece off. Okay, just like that. But I don't like having this little piece once I turn it to the other side. So I'm gonna go ahead and trim it off. And now I'm just gonna head to the machine and I'm just going to stitch right here just to secure that stitch again. And then I don't have to worry about it unraveling. Now I'm gonna take care of this in just a bit, but I want to just show you once you turn it to the inside. Once your corner out, you want to make sure that you have 1.5 inches here for the rest of the allowance, and then give it a really good press. Okay, now we're not going to slip stitch this to the jacket just yet because I do want to add twill tape on the remaining hem line here, just to make it look really nice and match up with everything else that we did on the inside. You don't want to do all that work and then get to the hem and then not secure it or make it look just as good as the rest of the jacket. So like I said, I'm going to turn this right back out. I'm going to go back and secure that. Now that is optional. So this one, I'm going to do the same exact thing. So you want to go about maybe 3/8 of an inch away from that fold line and then the stitching. And then I'm just going to go all the way across and then cut all of that off. Okay. So now I'm going to head to my machine. I'm going to go ahead and secure here. And then also here, and then I'm gonna turn everything right side out and give it a really good press, and I'm gonna do the other side the same way, and then I'm gonna show you the last few things you have to do for this project. Okay, so I'm back from the pressing table. As you can see, the hem is pressed up. I went ahead and just put pins just to keep everything in place because I'm gonna go back and put bias tape just on that raw edge, and then I'm gonna do the final step to hand stitch that closed, and then also those sides here. And then I'll open it up just a little bit more so you can see this other portion here. So basically I'm gonna put twill tape here to clean it up really nice, and then finish that off with a hand stitch, and then here, and then also here. All right, and then once you do that, you'll be done with the hem. And the last few things that you'll have to do, other than giving it a really good press, is to do your buttonholes and add your buttons. Now this is a 2 button, but you do need 3 buttons because the placement for the button that goes here, you're gonna need a button right on the other side of it because you have a buttonhole here for it to button up on the inside. If you ever worn a double breast jacket, you know what I'm talking about. And then once you button on the inside, it'll go over to the button that be here, and then you'll just button it up last right there. Okay, so make sure you press it on the on the roll line where it should be. If you forget where it is, just grab your pattern and then make those adjustments. So once you do your buttonholes, add your buttons, the 2 that go on the front and then 1 on the inside for the inside buttonhole, you want to just come up here to your peak lapel and then just tack it down right here, unless you just want it open. I think it's a better look if you have them touch and then just tack it down on both sides. And once again, like I said at the beginning, the placket here, the surgeon sleeves, it don't call for any buttonholes or buttons, but if you want to do buttonholes, you can go ahead and make your buttonholes here. I mean, you could probably put up to about 3 or 4 right here, depending on the size of the buttons. And then you can put your buttons here, so you have a working placket here when it comes to your buttonholes. But like I said, this is an oversized casual fit, as you can see with the half lining on the inside. This right here is meant to look just like this without the buttons or buttonholes. And once you do all of that, and again, giving it a good press, you're all done. All right, congratulations. I hope you enjoyed this sew along, and be sure to tag me on all your amazing makes at Norris Dental Ford, and I will see you in the next sew along.